Because you're running the business that you have today whilst building the business that you want tomorrow.
There's no shame in not hitting your numbers. There's only shame in not knowing why. If they're not good, how they're going to teach anybody else to be good? Usually they're stuck because they don't know what the problem is, or they're trying to fix the wrong problem.
Hello and welcome to the Lead to Win podcast. I'm your host, Usman, and today I'm with Cole Gordon. We're really going to cover in detail how you're going to manage your sales team on a higher level, how you're going to develop a sales rep to a sales manager, the differences between a sales manager to a sales director, and also the development for Cole Gordon that he had to take in the jumps of 0 to 300,000 a month, 600,000 a month, all the way to 3 million a month, and what he had to personally develop to get to that level of scale. So really eager for you to listen to this podcast. Stick around for the whole thing. If you like, subscribe and share it with a friend. Cole, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, happy to be here.
I've had to hunt you down through many countries and cities.
I know, I got to make you sell me. Gotta test your prospecting and your follow-up.
How did I do?
I'm here, so I guess good.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people know your story already around like traffic and funnels and all the stuff you did. So I don't think we need to focus anything on that. I'm sure they can find it elsewhere. I really want to make this podcast or this video for someone who really wants to learn the higher leverage stuff and all the things they need to do in terms of their entrepreneurship journey. I think the big thing that I'm noticing at the moment is marketers not understanding the difference between managing salespeople and managing operational people. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to get your opinion on what is the big difference between leading the different types of people that you have, operations people, or whether you're leading marketers or salespeople. How do you lead them?
Yeah, when you say marketers, you're kind of meaning people in the industry. Okay, so like you're not talking about like a CMO leading a sales.
Yeah, just like
just to be clear. So yeah, but people who are in the info course coaching space, which are more marketing type of people. Well, I mean, the first thing look, like once you know how to run a team, like a sales team, you find that all other teams run relatively similarly. I've never run a development team, so I can't say that if you have a team of developers, you're going to run them like a sales team. But I mean, I know that I'm sure there's similarities and some sort of skills transfer over. But I think one thing that really helped me is even before I built my company, I kind of had learned how to run sales teams. And then so when it came to building and running regular teams, it's almost way easier. And a lot of those skills transfer over. But let's kind of walk through. I don't even know if it's worth it to cover the key differences, but like what are the basic fundamentals of running the sales team? So let's just suppose you already have your salespeople, they're good, or you're improving them, but like you have the right people on the team and it's okay how to actually manage them. So I mean, first of all, like the cornerstone of the entire sort of management of your sales team and your sales system is your daily sales meeting. Okay. So especially if you run a remote company. If you don't, it becomes a lot easier in this way. But if you're in a remote company, anybody, like if I asked you, is sales culture important to a sales team's performance? What would you say?
Of course.
Yeah, of course, right? Well, if we know that to be true, well, culture in a remote company can only take place when 2 or more people are together at one time. So when you're doing remote, the only time that is on the sales meetings. So therefore, the quality of your sales meetings determines the quality of your culture. Does that make sense? And so the number one thing is to really have an hour-long sales meeting every single day, and it's almost like the cornerstone of the sales team. So I'll give you a little sidebar for a second, but I can almost tell how good or not good the sales team is and what the culture is like. I mean, I can definitely tell the culture, but the performance, I can even know just by the sales meeting, right? That's why even if I'm not the sales manager, like today, I'm not on the sales meeting, but a lot of times I attend every single sales meeting, or we have kind of multiple sales teams right now. So I'll kind of float between the different meetings of that time slot because I can just, even if I'm not running the meeting, I can get a really good idea what's happening just based on who's on the meeting, how the meeting is going, the tempo of the meeting, et cetera, just kind of just watching, right? So obviously we have that sales meeting. And then what's very, very key is, we start off with wins. And it's not like, it's all client wins. So we're not like, hey, who's got wins? And it's deer in the headlights and people are like, who's going to talk? We start off with wins and people are jumping in. It should be very, very quick. Okay. It kind of sounds a little corny, but it does raise the energy of the meeting, gets them prepared to come to the meeting. I grill them pretty hard if they come without a win. And like, as goofy as it sounds, like they have to look at and review their clients winning every single day, which builds certainty, which is, that affects sales performance, right? So that's like a quick 5-minute thing. I think it's worth doing. I've tried it without it. I added a back end because I think it's worth it. Then we do projections. So obviously we go through every single rep, where they're at in the month. What do they project for the month? Where are they at in the month? Are they on pace? If they're on pace, what's working really well? If they're not on pace, what's not working? And what do they need to do to get back on pace? And we do the same thing. Really, we look at monthly and weekly and kind of do more of an overall. Are you overall on pace, not on pace? If so, what's working you want to share with the team? If not, what do you need to do to be able to get back working? And so that's about 15 minutes. We go through that pretty rapidly. What we want to look for when we do that is kind of, I think I've called it behavioral to results awareness. So essentially, there's a saying in our culture that there's no shame in not hitting your numbers. There's only shame in not knowing why, right? Because an accurate diagnosis eventually leads to if you're aware of what the solution, or if you're aware, the more aware of what the problem is, the more obvious the solution becomes. Like with a lot of our clients, I tell our coaches, a client's not stuck because they know what the problem is and they don't know how to fix it. Usually they're stuck because they don't know what the problem is, or they're trying to fix the wrong problem. And so the more aware we can become on the problem, usually the solution becomes relatively obvious for a decently resourceful person. So going back to the sales meeting, I always want to really address this behavioral to results awareness. And so that's what I'm looking for when I run projections. So I might say like, John, where are you at for the month? And what I don't want is like, well, let me see, not aware. What I don't want is like, well, and like, I'm here, I'm not pacing. Why are you not pacing? Well, the leads, or, I don't know. It should sound like, John, where are you at for the month? Projecting 35 this month. Right now I'm pacing, I projected 35. Right now I'm pacing 28, so I'm a little bit behind. The reason I'm behind is last week I had 3 slated that I thought were going to come in, didn't come in. Some of them pushed. So I think those will come in for this week, and that'll keep me on pace. So all I need to do this week is just hedge a little bit, make sure I increase my numbers, make sure that I still hit my numbers this week, capitalize on those follow-ups from last week, and I should be back on pace. You see how that's like a self-aware answer? I know this is like a small thing, but that's like excellence. Like we want to really drill that, right?
Well, naturally, salespeople want to bullshit you because they are full of bullshit a lot of the time. So a good salesperson might say an excuse why they've not hit the number with the reason. So like, I'm off pace, but yeah, I'll get him in next week.
Yeah.
So
but that's vague, right?
Yeah,
like you see how the answer I gave you was specific. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm looking for there. And I can also, during this projections, I might look at, if I want to drill down on somebody, I might look at their calendar and be like, what happened here? What happened here? What happened here? I might look at their end of day report, which we'll cover in a second, and be like, what happened here? What happened here? What happened? Because usually sometimes just even by looking at their calendar, then putting their feet to the fire of like, what happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? You can find some obvious stuff. Oh, this person's, they love the call. They're totally sold. Okay, when's the follow-up? There's no follow-up. How often it's like, I don't know about how you train sales teams, but for me, it's like, you always set a follow-up no matter what.
Yeah, of course.
I don't care if they're like, dude, I don't need a follow-up. I'm 100% in. I'm going to send you the wire right now. I'm like, well, hey, no problem. I'll send you over the information. You can go and send it through. I got a few more things to cover for you that are going to be really important before your onboarding call. Let's just set a quick 15-minute call tomorrow. Because then that way there's a deadline, and if there's no follow-up, there's no deadline. Does that make sense? Like there's got to be a tempo to this thing. So anyways, like you could find stuff just through projections. But then after we're done with that, then what we do is some sort of training. So a lot of times I do call reviews, and you heard me speak just recently, but I like to focus the call reviews on the top half of the team, because if you the tendency is to focus on the worst people, right? But if you focus on the worst people, it's only the critique is only valuable to the worst people, and on top of that, not only it's only valuable to the worst people, but it like kind of creates like a negative feeling on the meetings, right? Because like you're just totally criticizing all the time, and those are the people that are most likely to churn. So I like to focus on the people who have been here and are really good, and try to make them better and try to widen the gap for them. And then that way, whatever they're doing wrong, everybody else can benefit. And I'm widening the gap for them. They're going to stay longer. I'm putting my energy into people who are the most valuable people to the team. And if I get them better, the rising tide will raise all ships, because they'll model these people's behavior. And then the call review becomes more praise-oriented anyways, because I'm also can reinforce a lot of things doing right that the other people need to do.
And also the gap becomes so big as well. So then the bottom performers will just leave.
Yes, or they'll get better. Like like recently we had a sales rep break all of our records, and when he broke all of the records, all the other team did better. It's like he broke even though like he broke, it's like the 5-minute mile thing. Yeah. So we'll do that. Sometimes it's call review. Sometimes I'll do like objections role play where I'm like, okay, here's the scenario, and I'll kind of map out the scenario. This type of prospect, this type of situation, this. I want to hear, and you got to make sure like you're like they're either bought in and it's only spouse, or they're bought in and it's only finances. Or you'll say like, they have the money, but they're really worried about this. Because in that way, you don't have this thing, which I'm fine with, but it kind of isn't productive, where the sales rep just becomes the unclosable prospect and just keeps throwing stuff at you. And then it just becomes this unrealistic scenario. Yeah. So like I kind of limited them to the objections that they can give me, even though I'm fine with, I could, even if they throw everything at me, I could still do pretty well. But like generally just for making it realistic, that's what I try to do. So do like a case study scenario. I'll handle it. And then I'll be like, okay, now you handle it. And then we switch in front of everybody. And a lot of times, like, them seeing me do it is probably even more valuable than the other way around, because it's very hard with, especially if I'm doing it, the owner of the company, it's like they get like nervous and then they're like trying to say the words perfectly and they're like, and they don't.
And are you still doing that, like even now?
Yeah, I'll do that because I like to. I mean, look, dude, sales. Our company does sales training. It's kind of our trade, right? It's also what I'm really good at. I mean, I think out of all my skills I have as a business owner, call reviews and sales training is probably my best skill, which is good. That's what my business is. But it really is. Like, I can, when I used to do it for clients, I mean, obviously now I don't do, call reviews and sales training as much for clients personally, like one-on-one, like my coaches do that. But when I used to do it for clients, like I had a client who, I do one for him the next day. Like he was like, every single time you do a call review, the next day we do a record month or a record day, And so I can really it's one of my best skill sets. I can do one call review and during the call review, just re-script out their entire sales process a lot of times because it's so bad for certain offers, especially with the ones I have a lot of experience with. But anyways, we'll either do a call review, we'll do some sort of role play, or what I do a lot of times is like skills test or business acumen test. So like with what we have to do, and you could do this in different ways, but what we do is, like what we sell, like we can sell all different revenue ranges from startup to, $1 billion a year, which we have worked with, all sorts of different industries. And then within all of those industries, all sorts of different problems, whether it's lead gen, setters, closers, managers, this, that, recruiting, different levels of recruiting, et cetera. Like it can be all sorts of complex stuff, sales ops, right? And all the things that can break down with sales ops with show rates and the application and, all this stuff. So the solutions can be highly customized. So because of that, a big part of getting the conversions is essentially having a high business acumen. And so I can train their business acumen by giving them case study scenarios. Okay, hey, what's the solution for this person? I make them all do it, put it in the chat. Then I critique with theirs and I show them what mine would have been. So it's like, you do it, I do it, look at the delta, try to become more like how I'm doing it, right? So that's just I've been talking for how long? I just covered the sales meeting, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is you obviously have your one-on-ones with the reps. I think usually, about an hour a week with each rep is pretty good. You can kind of check in with them, see how they're doing, and then do a personal training. And then the next thing is we have end of day reports to where they submit it end of day. Every single person they talk to, what happened, what was the business, or what was like the prospect of the business, or like the relevant information on the prospect. What was like happened during the call and what's like the outcome / next step of the call. Like I only need really 3 to 4 sentences, but that really gives me a good idea of kind of the pulse of how the day went. How many people showed up, didn't show up, what was the quality of the prospects, etc. And then from that, what I'm looking for is calls that look like they should have closed but didn't close, which usually sound like this. Great call, push to follow up, right? That's usually what those calls sound like, that should have closed but didn't close. Like, how it is. Yeah. It's like, oh, it was a great call, totally great fit, follow up Tuesday. And you're like, why not purchase today, right? Or like, third call on Friday, why not today? Now, maybe there is a good reason sometimes, but sometimes there's not. So a lot of those are what I call fringe deals, which are deals that should close but not close, right? And the difference between your best rep and your worst rep is not, like there's 3 types of deals. There's laydowns, there's calls that are never going to close. Right, laydowns are like they buy in spite of the prospect. It's like they were going to buy no matter what.
Yeah.
Then there's people who are never going to close. Maybe they physically don't have the money. Like they have $500 and your program's $20,000. Okay, they're not going to do it. Or they're just genuinely not a fit, right? In the sense of like, I help realtors and this person's mortgage. Okay, like DQ, you know? So there's the never going to close, there's the laydowns, and then everything in between, which is like 60 to 80% generally, is what I call fringe deals. These are deals that aren't laydowns. There might be some stuff you have to wade through, right? Or some objections or some logistics or whatever, but they are closable. And the difference between your rep, let's say your best rep does 30 sales a month and your, median rep does 10 sales a month. The difference of the 20 and the delta, given all lead quality is the same, take out lead routing, I suppose, but given all lead quality is the same, is the fringe deals, right? So really all management all revolves around how do I get more of these fringe deals? Does that make sense? So what I want to look for in the end of days is those fringe deals, because those are the low-hanging fruit that are the deals that should be closing that are not closing. Because as you know, like you'll close like, create like 40% or something. And then your rep on the same leads closes 20%. And really like the way to get him to 40 is first identify the low-hanging fruit that you easily would have closed that he wouldn't have closed, right? I mean, this is kind of common sense, but I'm kind of breaking it down to the detail. So the end of day report helps me identify those things. And then that feeds me into what calls I should review the next day. Does that make sense? Sometimes I review wins, like closes, but a lot of times I review calls that didn't close. But then also in my QC, which if you're really going to lead a team, like you have to understand, like if you're the let's say in an evolution of a business owner, if you're the closer, right, and you're closing all, which usually most founders start off that way, and they're closing all their own sales, they might be closing 35% or whatever. And if you're doing it properly, you should really set the gold standard baseline of what's possible in your company. And then that means, okay, you hire your first salesperson or your second salesperson, the next, they should be able to close 25 to 30, right? They might not close as good as you because you're the founder, you have all this technical knowledge, whatever, but they should close 25 to, let's say, 30%, okay? Your job, once you move into management, your job is to ensure the quality of what happens on the front lines. So like, I always like this phrase, the quality of your business is the quality of what happens on the front lines, okay? So what are the front lines? That's all the customer interfacing aspects of your business. So the quality of the business is the ad and how they viewed, perceived, and interacted with the ad, maybe the sales ops process in between. Oh, did a setter call them? How was that conversation? How did the conversation with a closer go? How did the onboarding call go? What's the course look like, if you're selling an info product or whatever? Or what's the service look like if it's more of a service, and the interactions with the people that, you see what I'm saying? It's like all the customer interfacing things is the quality of the business. The managers or you're not the quality of the business once you have a big team. It's really dictated by all these front lines. So if we know that to be true, what's the job of the manager? To really raise the standard of the performance up to that gold standard of baseline that is possible at the front lines. So to become a great leader, I mean, that's really all you're doing is you're just training them up, the front lines type of people, to be as good as they possibly can be. And then if you're a leader of leaders, like you're training a sales manager to train those people, then really what you're doing is you're training this person on how to do what you just likely did that they replaced you for, which is train up those frontline people. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, where was I going with that? Ask your question. I went on a long tear.
That was a good tear. So I wanted to just focus on that part of developing skills, but I also want to ask you about leading leaders. But first I want to ask you about just the development of skills. Like you had these times in your business where you were kind of at post-lockdown, you went to 250, then you started doubling, went to 300, then 600, then you started obviously growing your business in a more of an exponential manner to a certain point. And then in these phases, it looks like from an outside, your core skills were already sales training, and obviously copywriting or VSL building. That you may have these core skills, and you'll also correct me on the other core skills that you had. What skills did you start to develop for you to really make those jumps later on? Or when you stagnated, did they stagnate because of a skill that you had to develop?
Well, here's how I think about this. When I started, I knew I was pretty good at sales training. And I watched a lot of sales trainers just trying to be better than other sales trainers at sales training. And then they're teaching like super advanced NLP, hypnotic stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's really cool. I like that stuff. Okay, great. Awesome. And I know some of that stuff too. But then you got to get into sales training. When you really work with reps on the front lines, you're just like, okay, like really my job is to get somebody from like not that good to just like good. You know, it's not about trying to teach them the craziest, most advanced NLP, hypnotic, this and that, and, you know, turning them into a complete psycho. You know, it's like you're just trying to get them from like not good to like good. Like, you know, that's mainly what sales training is most times when you work with most clients commercially. Okay. So once I figured that out, I'm like, okay, I need to stop like out competing every other sales trainer, which is sales training. My sales training product is good enough. I was like, where do all of they lack? You know, it's like, what is everybody focusing on? And then it's like, you kind of want a blue ocean, like focus on a different thing. And I was like, man, none of like all these sales trainers are really good at sales training. They're terrible at marketing. So the first skill I was like, I'm going to really learn this skill was direct response, copywriting, marketing, media buying. Now I had an advantage because my first business before I was even in sales, a lot of people know this, was an agency. And I ran ads for e-commerce companies. That's how I got into sales. That's how I figured out what sales was. I was like, I got to sell these e-com companies. So I knew how to buy ads. I knew all this stuff a little bit. I had to refresh. So that was the first skill developed. And then it was like, oh, okay, you know, once I'm, let's say, doing 300 grand to 600 grand a month, then it's like, oh, well, like in this business model in general, the people who have the biggest businesses are the best leaders and the best operators. So then it's like, okay, and I kind of knew this because I had worked for TF and they were a multiple 8-figure company. And so I kind of like, I'd already known this as a realization, but I'm like, now I got to really develop that skill. And how do I, you know, at first it's like I was saying before, when you got to go through stages, right? So this will kind of connect the loop of what I was saying before because it was a little ranty. But the first stage is you're doing like the quality of your business is what happens on the front lines. At first, like you are the front lines, like you just do everything. Then, you know, you move up a level and you're managing all the people on the front lines. And so your job is just to train them up to the gold standard of what's possible. And then you move up and you have like you, and then there's like manager, and then team, right? And then, so then your job then is to train them on how to train their team to get to that gold standard of performance and make sure that, because as you add levels, generally what happens in most organizations, the atrophy is that basically that standard drops because it's like a further removal of almost like
shit travels downwards.
Does that make sense? So when you get to that part where you're leading leaders, really the key is like, so if you're leading frontlines people, it's really about QC and coaching them. It's like, hey, this is the standard. I QC'd. You're here. Here's what you need to do to get to here. And here's what this sounds like again, right? Example, what's good. Here's what's keeping you from this example. Here's the gap. Here's what you need to do to work on it, right? But then when you're leading leaders, it's a little bit more tricky because you're like, how do I teach this person to be a good manager and even know that they're doing a good job? All right. So the way you do that is you QC their QC. So like the easiest way to give you an example is like sales. So if I have a sales manager, the easiest way for me to see how good they are is to maybe not be on the sales meeting, but review the sales meeting, see how they're running the sales meeting. How does that differ from how I would have done it? See them doing a call review. And then are they catching the things on the call review that I would have caught? Are they giving them the same feedback that I would have got? And so it's like, it's almost call review like Inception, you know, to where like I might get on with them and I might review a call with them and then pause the call and be like, what did you think of that part? What did you catch here? What would you recommend them to say differently here? Okay, I kind of like that, but this is how I would do it. Do you see how that's a little bit better than how you did it? Do you think you could recommend it that way to them next time you give them this feedback? Do you see how that works?
Yeah.
You can even review their one-on-one and see how they're personally leading people. You can also do upward feedback where like sometimes I just call people and I'm like, hey, what's your thoughts of this person? Like, do you think your manager's doing a good job off the record? Right? What would be your biggest piece of feedback for them? So that's kind of developing that like second level of leadership, so to speak.
Yeah. So you at times would go straight to the rep and then just ask them how they're doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, generally when you do that though, they're like, oh yeah, I like my manager, you know, so yeah. It's a good practice, but I like to do the QC of the QC.
Okay, nice. And then the next thing is like we're really focusing on the development of your skill, because when you've now gone up and you've, let's say you're making 3 million a month now, what are the skills that you've had to work on right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
I think that right now is more strategic, right? So, you know, and here's the tricky thing. You remember how I said most people are stuck, not because they know what the problem is, but they don't know how to fix it?
Yeah. It's
because they don't know what the problem is, they're trying to fix the wrong problem. I mean, any level of being, you know, I've been around 30 million, 40 million-ish for the last several years, right? And so obviously, like, I might not even know what the constraint or the problem is, which is the fundamental issue. But what I think it is kind of, if I had to describe it in the best way I can, it's kind of like strategy. And I'll give you an example is like, in most high ticket businesses, they get to a point where usually around 1, 2, 3 million a month, like the kind of like labor economics, for instance, becomes a little bit more tough. So what I mean by that is like, let me put it this way, the income to complexity ratio. So for instance, it's like in a high ticket business, going from 0 to 400 a month is like super easy, right? Going from 400 to 4 million a month is like adding a lot of, you know, CSMs or coaches or account managers. It's adding a lot of, okay, I got to add this marketing staff. I got to go from 4 salespeople to 8 salespeople, and you deal with this atrophy on all of the way up. And a lot of times what happens is like you have this huge organization with not an income that reflects how big your organization is. And fundamentally, it's like compared to a SaaS that has much better kind of economics like that, to where like once you have the product right, it's like crazy scalable, you know? So your kind of revenue potential top line based on your churn is much, and you know, software tends not to churn as much, is much higher. Whereas like with a service is we tend to cap out because either the ad spend gets too expensive, we can't scale a sales team any more than this because, you know, of the complexity, we don't have enough managers, not enough time, you know, that's kind of what ends up happening. Or we just have so many clients, or we have to have so many coaches, and it's like, man, if we were to like for me in my current model to double my business, it would be like doubling my, and not doubling my staff, but I mean, it would be pretty close. You know, it'd be like 1.5, 1.6xing my staff. And that's a lot of new training. And then also at those higher levels, you know, 5% churn on a 100-person sales team is much more substantial than 5% churn technical like rate on a 10-person sales team or a 5-person sales team, right? So I'll give you an example. I think the biggest thing I'm working on right now, and the biggest skill I'm trying to acquire, is landing enterprise level customers, because those customers can be worth 10, 20 of our current customers. And we already have like 6 to 8 of those customers now paying us 10 to 50 grand a month. And I'd like to get more of those and scale that way. They're easier to work with, but they're harder to land. And so how do we open up a channel to get more of those people? Because there's so few. I can't, you know, my thing is like, I'm really good. I have a great skill of running ads. I'm really great at selling to consumers, but it's very tough when, you know, you're not going to be able to probably run ads to an enterprise level customer. I mean, maybe you could. I'll let you know.
So have you hired another separate sales team for that? A salesperson for that? For more outbound?
I think, so there's kind of 2 ways to do it, right? We could try to acquire the skill. Like Jeff Bezos says, you know, you want to be able to, I'm going to butcher this quote, but it's something along the lines of, you don't want to just focus on the skills that you have and how to expand. It's like, you also want to ask what new skills could you gain? Because if you don't gain new skills as an organization, you're not growing. So there's 2 ways to gain that skill. I can either bring somebody in who already has the skill, or what I can do is I can try to kind of figure out the skill myself, and then I can teach somebody else and I can process it and I can do it. I have a couple hypotheses of how to do that now that I think that we can do internally. But at the same time, I'm, you know, setting up some interviews with like experienced enterprise account-based marketers to kind of learn what's working in those worlds. Worst case or best case, find somebody who could lead out that product, or that, not product, but revenue division.
And it's spinning 2 plates, because you're running the business that you have today whilst building the business that you want tomorrow. So there is a bit of a spinning of plates there that you have to do at the moment. It sounds like.
Kind of, yeah. You just deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just what business is.
Yeah. And I did some research, and last month you had one of your best months in terms of like what you spent to acquire for that month. And is this because you recently had a good CMO hire, or like?
No, you know, that's an interesting question. I think what happened was I had a lot of reshuffling last year. You know, I used to have like kind of 3 companies in our holdco, and now it just went down to 1. So it's really just not a holdco, it's 1 company. And when we did that, or kind of like, it kind of fundamentally changed the business and the profit margins of the business, because we were sharing services across those 3 companies. And then on top of that, due to the change that happened in show rates of 2023, we have to double book some appointments, which kind of brings down, you know, we have to spend more on ads to fill the same amount of calendar spaces. And so like it fundamentally changed what like a good baseline CAC was. And so I kind of had to like take a second to sort of reconfigure. And really the reason why we had the best month we've had in terms of CAC was same team. It just was more awareness and more control around, what we think that CAC number should actually be, and just, it sounds simple, but just KPIing it and sticking to, and being like projecting it and being like, this is what we're going to try to do for CAC this month. We were getting a little out of control with it. It's a little bit of a long story, but it wasn't anything super major aside from just a little bit more awareness with it.
And then my final two questions are some that are more nuanced to a lot of CEOs that are developing a sales rep to a sales manager and then a sales manager to a sales director. And those two jumps are so big for like on both of them. So like in terms of like when you're putting in a sales manager from a sales rep or you're recruiting for a sales manager, what should that CEO be looking for?
Well, there's a couple of things. So number one is if you're going to be hiring a sales manager directly on, they should have, I talked about in my presentation that you just saw this morning, they should have, obviously buy-in to your mission, vision, and values, et cetera. That's non-negotiable. But this is a case where they need to have the industry acumen. Like they need to be able to like understand your industry really well, like, and obviously be experienced in the role that you're hiring them for. So like, if you're going to bring them directly in, you need somebody who's basically sold more or less the same thing, scaled a team to a bigger and higher level, and they're just going to come and do it for you and just rebuild it, right? Or like just, it's almost like they're doing something they've already done. And then maybe eventually they take it to a higher level than they've ever been before, but that's what I'm looking for. Now, even with that, I'm always going to have them start to take calls in the beginning for 30 to 45 days, unless they're like really, really phenomenal. And it's like crazy obvious. Like, look, they have crazy experience selling and leading teams of this exact thing. Then I might not do it that way. But generally, if that makes sense. Like I'm really going to look for somebody who has that exact experience. But almost always, I'm going to have them take calls first. Even if it's for a week, I don't care. I just need to make sure they can close, and then they get the sales process, and then the sales process. Do not skip that step unless there could be times where you have like a unicorn. Like I have brought people directly in, but I also have a really great distribution of people, and I know, okay, they've sold this type of offer. It's basically the same. They're going to be able to coach the team fine, etc. So that's one route. Now, most people, like my clients who end up with a sales manager, they're promoted internally. And so they're like, what you're looking for is definitely one of your top 1-2 people, generally. If your team's less than, let's say, 6, generally one of your top 1 or 2 people. And then that's kind of the first thing. Like if they can't do the thing, they're not going to be able to teach other people how to do the thing. Now, sometimes your best salesperson is kind of like this rogue lone wolf. It doesn't mean they're always going to be the best manager, but also what's also true is if they're not good, how they're going to teach anybody else to be good. Like they're not going to be able to teach anybody else to be better than them. Okay. That's the first thing what I want to look for. The second thing is like their ability, and this will take a while, but this is something you have to kind of cultivate, is their ability to lead. So what does that mean? Like hold people accountable, to to be the authority on a meeting and to command attention on a meeting, like those things. So they have to be able to hold people accountable. They have to be able to paint vision for
that stuff's really hard to train. I think that's a natural attribute.
So the key is, and you get this from Hormozy, is you got to kind of like chunk and break it down, right? And I kind of just know this when I train them of where they're struggling. But if it helps, like write it down. Like, okay, I need to make them a better leader. Like, what does that even mean? Okay, well, when we're running projections at a meeting, they need to hold them more accountable when their awareness isn't there.
Yeah.
When they're giving feedback on their call reviews, they need to give feedback that's closer to my feedback because their feedback generally lacks X, Y, and Z. They miss X, Y, and Z. When they're on one-on-ones, they need to paint a better vision of where the rep is, what they need to work on, and ultimately where they could be and how that relates to the goals that they already told us that they have. See how like those are more specific?
Yep.
And then that helps with training purposes.
Yep.
Now, the key thing is people want to have their sales, they want to have a sales manager and they want to have it happen like a light switch, and it's more of a volume knob. So it's not something to where, oh, this is my best rep. Okay, great. Hey, you're now the sales manager. Here's kind of what I used to do. You saw me do it. Go do it. That's like a coin flip because like there's no training. But a lot of people do that, to be frank. I would recommend doing that. What I would do is you view it like a volume knob. So you're like, okay, hey, we're going to promote you to manager. At first, hey, let's take your call volume down a little bit. And I don't, I'm not a big proponent of player coaches, But as like a transitionary role, it could be okay. So it's like, hey, let's take your call volume down a tad. Like, let's take you off half Friday. And all I want you to do is 10 call reviews a week at your downtime, unpaid. And I just want to see if your call reviews sound like my call reviews. So that's step one. Step two is like, okay, great. Like, you're the manager, but you're going to do the one-on-ones. You're going to do X amount of, I expect you to do this amount of call reviews a week and this activity and that activity and this activity, but I'm still going to run the meetings. And then it's like, okay, great. And then now maybe you give them 1 meeting a week and then you write coach on that meeting. Then you give them 2 meetings a week and then you write coach on that meeting. Then you give them all the meetings a week, but you write coach on every meeting. And then then you end up only showing up to 2 meetings. And so and it might be a 6-month process to really get them in that groove to where the team sees them as a leader. They're able to like hold the team in the confidence, those types of things.
Very nice. And then what about that same journey from sales manager to sales director? Is that fresh recruit? Can you develop?
So define sales director.
Okay, so
some people might not know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so like someone who can really see the strategic side, link comms as CMO, and guide more data and understand strategy between the company and speak to the CEO in a manner which is like generally growing the whole sales function rather than a sales manager who's just there to train, recruit.
Right. So what you're really talking about, because most people, in my mind, when you say sales manager to director, that's like somebody with multiple sales managers under them, which means like you're going to be teaching them basically everything I already explained, which is QCing their QC and all that stuff. And I mean, that means they have to be like, you have to be like, man, I wish every single sales manager was like this person and they're like really, really good. So, but I don't think a lot of people probably listening to this are at that level. I think what you're talking about is like, how do you coach it's like, okay, I can teach my sales manager how to be a sales coach, but how do I get them to where they're like a revenue kind of leader, right? To where they can broaden the perspective, not just of the sales coaching, but maybe how that interacts with different parts of the businesses. So, I mean, the number one key thing with that would be, if you don't have this, there should be a twice weekly marketing sales sync where we go over all the marketing and sales metrics for every single channel and ultimately overall as the company, right? And I mean, that's something that I'm still on to this day. And I always have my sales managers on that. And I kind of incorporate them into, okay, making sure they're looking at the data, making sure they're seeing what I'm seeing. And like the same way, like awareness around projections for reps, on that meeting, I might be like, sales manager, why is this percentage low? Why is lead to set for setters low this month? And are they aware of that? And like helping them kind of develop the awareness of numbers and then also being able to communicate with marketing in the right way. So I'll give you an example. This is a different example, but I did it with my CMO yesterday. There was a sales thing where we were having some reps not handle their appointments the way they should be handled. And I'm like, telling my CMO, I was like, hey, this isn't your responsibility. This is not your job. But like, you need to have this awareness of like a business owner level. Because like as a business owner, I come in and I see everything that's going on within the company, right? I'm always I'm noticing everything. So I'm like, what you need to do is you need to have that same level of awareness to be able to notice those things, even if it's not your department, because it does affect revenue, which does affect you, right? And then the same thing with that sales manager. I'm like, yo, dude, this was your responsibility. Like, you need to be more aware of these things. And you got to give those examples and how to build it. But that's also a gradual process. And just like, it's almost like a great way to think about it is that you'll be catching yourself doing something. And then you need to be asking the question always. Or even if it's not doing, you might catch yourself noticing something about a disconnect with the numbers or something that's happening. The first question you should ask is this something that really somebody else should have noticed before me? And if so, that's a training opportunity every single time.
Yeah, there's an element about the Starbucks CEO. I've read something in a book where the Starbucks CEO saw in one of the stores, the light was out. And when the light was out, he didn't ask, why is the light out? He thought, what system in my business is there where when the light goes out, I'm not notified or we don't know? So rather than telling someone, hey, get that light fixed, which is a different type of scenario, it's putting a system in place and then having your directors think about systems where things can't go wrong rather than just trying to fix things after they've gone wrong. So, I really like that mindset. And you said around developing your leaders in terms of a gap. And you're creating more of a gap because you're like, well, you know everything about your department, you're a director, but now the gap is you don't know anything about all the parts of the business.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yep. Okay. Amazing. It's been really nice speaking to you. I've really, it's been insightful, and it's good to get a different perspective on things as well. So, obviously, I love sales. I love sales leadership. It's something that I actively think about all the time. So, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Cole.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you for listening to the Lead to Win podcast. I've been your host, Usman Kiani. Subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend, and I'll catch you on the next one.